Now, there might be something more important than figure drawing in comic book artwork, but we sure don't know what it is. You can't have superhero comic books without superheroes, and you can't have superheroes unless you draw their figures. But there's more to it than just drawing figures. You've got to be able to draw them the Marvel way, and that means as dramatically and as heroically as possible. So here's where it all starts to pay off. The average guy is about 6.5 heads tall. But look at this sketch of Reed Richards.
Notice that he's 8 3/4 heads tall. This extra height is one of the secrets that gives Marvel superheroes proportions which the world has come to expect. His shoulders are good and wide, and his hips are real narrow. And as you'll see in a moment, the male is drawn much more angular than the female. Another thing to remember, the elbows fall just below the waist. This is true of men and women.
And speaking of women, where would Reed Richards be without his stunning Sue?
Notice that she, too, is 8 3/4 heads tall, with her hips much wider in relation to her shoulders than they would be on a male. Obviously, we do not emphasize the muscles on a woman.
Now, discover the difference between a normally proportioned male and a heroically proportioned Marvel superhero. Note that the superhero is larger, with broader shoulders, more muscular arms and legs, a heavier chest, and even a more imposing stance. There's nothing weak-looking about the fella standing next to Captain America, but a superhero simply has to look more impressive, more dramatic than the average guy.
An important point to remember is to always slightly exaggerate the heroic traits. Ignore or leave out any negative, undramatic qualities.
Would you believe that virtually the same rules apply to the villains as to the heroes? Take a close look at these next two drawings of the dramatically demoniacal Dr. Doom. The illustration on top is rather ordinary. It lacks those special qualities which distinguish a Marvel panel. However, the second illustration is drawn in the dynamic Marvel style. Let's see what the differences are. Basically, there's nothing wrong with the top figure, but you can see how the one below is more exaggerated. Doc's arms and legs are heavier, more imposing. His feet are planted further apart, giving more majesty to his stance. His tunic is flaring, denoting action even though he's standing still. His chest is larger, and his hands are bigger and more powerful. The differences are subtle, but this is the way Marvel would do it. Train your eye to catch these elusive but essential variations. Still, there are exceptions to every rule. I'm sure you recognize the lovable Thing, but did you know he's only 6 heads high? And here's the Kingpin, barely 5 heads high. You see, the trick is to make him look squat without making him look like a panty waist. Incidentally, the smaller the head in proportion to the body, the heavier and more bulky the body will seem. And now that we've studied the figure, here's what you've all been waiting for.